We have a fire ripping, and I'm indoors. I'm going to do my first attempt at sharing some of the late and great Bobby Short's research and investigations and her interviews with numerous people who are involved with killings of these Sasquatch beings. All right. Now, this is sent to me from one of Bobby's close friends, a true saint, true angel in our lifetime today. I have to keep her name private. And I've got a whole pile of correspondence here. I have a book of Bobby Short. I have a copy of Bobby Short's unpublished book, and I have these. I have a handful of these papers, which discuss numerous killings of these things. All right. So let's try one and see how it works out. And you don't need to stare at my ugly mug indoors while I read. So maybe I'll throw down a bunch of outdoor clips for you to gaze at while you listen to this. All right. So the first, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's close to 4 full pages of the description of who these people were, where she met them from, a little bit of the background, and but what I think I'll get right to the meat of this. All right, because it's going to be fairly detailed. I'm not sure how long it's going to take. Now, what Bobby did was she wrote down questions and answers. I mean, every single word that was spoke between her and the person she interviewed, every single word she wrote down. All right. So let's just pretend we're involved in the conversation. And here we go. So I'll take it about halfway down this 3rd or 4th page. And it says, one of those first Bigfoot reports I received in those early days was from Paul Wilson, who told me about an incident published in Rocky Mountain News. It involved a witness named Dan Messias from the Green Mountain Falls, Colorado area. Messias reportedly saw 2 hair-covered beings on March of 1987. And the interesting part of that news item to me was that Messias said that both the creatures were blonde. The track of one of them showed it was crippled, similar to the more famous Bosberg, Washington cripple tracks that a butcher by the name of Joe Rhodes found leading out of the garbage dump in 1969. My encounter was all I knew about the coloring of the Sasquatch, and the one I saw was dark-haired, not blonde. I had not anticipated so many color variations within the Sasquatch population. I was intrigued. Were all the Rocky Mountain Bigfoot blondes? At the time, I didn't know. We all have a starting point. This is the part of my early day processing. It was part of my awakening to a broader sense of what I would hear and observe in the years coming. Wilson, who claimed he was a far distant cousin to Brian Wilson of the singing group The Beach Boys, could cite popular music titles and the years they were on the charts for how long. He was an avid bow and rifle hunter, often hunting in the forests of the Rocky Mountain Range, from the Gunnison on the western slope of the Colorado to the Sangre de Cristo Mountains Range on the eastern slope. But his favorite hunting ground was in the Wind River Mountain Range of Wyoming. It was his home turf. It was a full year later that I first heard him talk about his early life as a kid on the Wind River Reservation where he was raised. Wilson rarely talked about an incident that occurred while bow hunting the Wind River Range with one of his much younger cousins. It involved an accidental arrow into the back of an adult Sasquatch they mistook for a grazing black bear. It is a story I had trouble thinking about, but around a crackling campfire was just the fare any camper likes to hear, and it made us cautiously survey the dark outer edges of the forest that lay beyond the glare of the fire that night. We begged him for the story. He finally relented. I am unable to recall the exact date he finally agreed to tape record a session where he would talk about it with me in detail, but I know it was several years later, maybe 1999. Generally, the shootings I hear about of a Bigfoot are kept pretty much under the wraps, regardless of where they occur. You will notice in the following interview I wasn't much interested in how the killing came about, as I was in the description of the Bigfoot that Paul had pigeonholed away in his memory. That pretty much tells you where my head was. Why was this important? At the time of this interview, the ape hypothesis was in full swing. Any description tossed around in Bigfoot circles that deviated from the ape theorem was intensely ridiculed. Those who dared to express an opposing opinion received glares of disapproval. Some were even discredited. Yeah, go figure, eh, Bobby? Go figure. So it was that with a bit more belligerent air I hassled Wilson, unashamedly, for this interview. The details he saw in the corpse were at the time crucial to my early research. The detail he described was important for those who had ears to hear. After removing that arrow from its body, Wilson actually surveyed it, taking notice of its aesthetic appearance. I hope you find his details interesting as I did. Their narrative begins with Paul and one of his cousins hunting one fall day on the sloped canyons of the Wyoming Rockies. Both were in their late teens, Paul barely 18 years old. Sliding down an embankment, they caught sight of a dark figure down low in the tall grass, its backside a bit up in the air, facing two boys. Paul thought it was a big bear. It was not. The description he gave of the Sasquatch was as detailed as I ever received, and I have not read or heard anything like it since. Wilson is graphic in his detail. It was his way. His unedited words may be disturbing. Here's the interview. After an exchange of niceties and half an hour devoted to Paul's great love of the music and his hand-painted miniature soldier collection, we got down to the description of the Sasquatch corpse. Here's the abbreviated portion of the recorded interview. So I guess how it's it's written down on a piece of paper. So each time Bobby speaks, it's just a B, and then she speaks, and the next one's P for Paul. So I guess I'll just read their full names ahead of each sentence, so you know who's saying what, right? Bobby. Paul. So okay to record this, Paul? Paul. Yes, sure. Go ahead and record. Your name? Aaron Paul Wilson. Paul, let's talk about the Sasquatch shooting. I would really like to record just the physical description before it gets by us again, as best you remember the creature. Paul. Sure. Okay, yes, ma'am. What would you like to know? Where do we start? Nothing else to do. Snowstorm here today. About a half foot on the ground already. Blizzard conditions. Got Patti LaBelle going in the background. Should I put some Doobie Brothers on to play? Bobby. Sure, play the Doobies. What a Fool Believes, playing in the background. You ready? Okay, Paul. It's face. You got a good look, right? I mean, you can give me details. I'd like to compare. Can you turn the volume up? Paul. Yes, ma'am. How's that? Do you hear it okay? Details. His eyes were open, and after he died, sort of glazed over. The wincing around the eyes relaxed as he passed. Bobby. I know, Paul. That's tough to watch. It makes you feel like they're watching you. So the eyes talk to me. Did the creature have whites around his eyes? Like a Sierra? Paul. Yes, ma'am. Only you would think to ask that. There was white around brown eyes, if I remember right. Big eyes. Like surprised eyes. There were no wrinkles or scars or anything like that. Nothing unusual. Not deep set like. Laughing. Bobby. The argument I encounter is that the face is ape-like. Krantz says Gigantopithecus. What's your impression? Bracket. Krantz was alive at the time of this interview. End bracket. Paul. Look, this is no bear, it was no ape. This thing had a beard like any man on the street, and he never shaved. You know, like the beard of an indigent man. You see, it was, well now, ape-like would be maybe his forehead. It was wide and thickly eyebrowed. The rest was like any man with a strong jawline. And what would Krantz know? According to his book, he never saw a Sasquatch. These knee-jerk PhDs show their ignorance when they take a stance on something they've never seen. That's science for you, ma'am. Wilson's rant on Krantz edited out. Okay. Bobby. You're ranting, Paul, like to Hendon. Cut it out. Come on, I want to ask about the nose, Paul. Talk to me about the nose. What did it look like? Paul. His nose was large and bulbous-tipped. You know, it fit the face okay, and I didn't see anything unusual about it. A big nose, of course. Bobby. But about the nostrils. Which way did the nostrils open? Like, open-faced nostrils like the gorillas? Or maybe face downwards? Or did his nostrils face forward like a bear or a bloodhound? Which way was the opening of the nostrils, if you remember? Paul. Well, you mean, I see. The two nostrils opened downward, just like mine, and hairs grew out of his nose onto the upper lip. And, that had, a mustache that was quite thick. What color were the nose hairs and mustache? Ma'am, his nose was quite large. Yes, big-nosed fella. but normal looking for his size. He was a big fella, nostrils wide open, face downwards. Yep, the hairs were black as pitch, and if you were puzzled over hairs growing out of his nose, you'll love this. He also had hairs growing out of his ears. Black hairs. Bobby, huh? Come on, get serious. I don't believe you. Laughing in disbelief. But I guess I've seen hair in ears. I can't remember who at the moment, but I know it happens. But, Paul, you said hair grew out of his nose, like... Paul, yes, exactly. Out of the nostrils onto the upper lip. Some hairs around the creases of his nose, too. Geez, Paul, you should have been a mortician. You're really good. Much laughter. Nope, I don't much care for dead things. Bobby, hard to imagine. Both hard to imagine. Paul, yeah, I know, but it did. Bobby, so the mustache, it was trimmed? No, ma'am, it wasn't. Trimmed? Now who's shitting who here? Laughing. Bobby, that's weird. So the mustache just grew over its mouth like? Paul, yes, but seemed... So, Paul, back to the nose. I've seen sketches done by artists of open nostrils facing forward. You know, like open, like gorillas. You know, open forward, would you say? Paul interrupting. No, ma'am, nothing like a gorilla. The nose opening face downwards. It was like my nose in all respects, except his was much larger. He was larger around, you see? Big. Girl, big. Okay, so then tell me this. Was the facial profile prognathic? What? Prognathic. Like as in orangutans, did the jaw project or just prognathic? Like as in orangutans, did the jaw project or jut forward? Nope. Was the forehead sloped as with male gorillas? I don't recall it did. No. What was that? Oh, just me popping a stick of gum. Was the head pointed? A shaped conical or unusually shaped in any way you noticed? The head was shaped like mine. I know what you mean, though. No, the top of its head was more like mine, only bigger. In the one you saw, did you see an A-shaped head pointy? Bobby, no, I didn't, but I don't recall that it was extraordinarily big. When you say big like you do, big like as in what? Paul, his size, you mean? I never saw him standing. He was down, but he was big. Bobby, okay, that works. You're talking all over body size. Jacques O'Neill big like? Paul, bigger. I think bigger, wider. How tall is O'Neill? 7 foot something? Bobby, not too sure. It seems like I read somewhere he was over 7'1". Yes, ma'am, he was all that, maybe even more. Wider than a basketball player. You know, thicker, broader, laying there, unmistakably broad through the chest, upper chest. Bobby, yes, okay. Gee, I wish I could have lingered over his body like you did. Thanks. Now, how about his cheeks? Anything unusual there? Paul, no, ma'am. You mean, like what? His face was like a man, but not like a man. It may be that I remember dimly, but his huge size seemed to seems to have distorted his features. Does that make sense? Can you hear this one? Bobby, who is that? I can't hear that. Can you? Paul, Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl, 1981. But you like Michael, right? Yes, either Billie Jean, Beat It. What years were those on the charts? Paul, 1982, I believe. Here, this one's for you. What were you doing in 82? Bobby. Oh, that's Billie Jean. Turn that one up. Back to the cheeks, Paul. Well, like the one I saw had cheeks like two rosy apples. Prominent, high rosy apple cheeks. Paul. Oh no, not that round, but prominent, high-set cheeks. Yes, and a pair of whiskers on the cheeks. Right? His beard started below his cheek level. The face had everything exaggerated because he was so much larger in the face than me. Bobby. How tall are you again? 5'11" or so? Sounds like his face startled you. Paul. The dying part startled me. I was just a kid, Bobby. His size did... Damn, he was big. I'm 5'11", yes. Bobby. You can't guess his height? Paul. We didn't measure or anything like that. We looked him over real. Paul. We didn't measure anything like that. We looked him over real good. He was just massive. Bobby. Are you struggling for a word? Paul. Yeah. Do you think he may have been 7 feet or so? Oh, hell yes. Then some. Width of his shoulders was... Some of the males get big, I hear. This guy was... Bobby, I get it. The massiveness is hard to imagine. Was there hair on the forehead? Paul. Yeah, hard too. No, ma'am, no hair on the forehead. But he had a mess of hair, all tangled. You know, not groomed or anything. The hair on his head was thick, long, and it fell over and on into his face. There were stickers and leaf matter stuck in the back of his head. Bobby. Oh, you mean like dreadlocks? Paul. Dreadlocks? You mean like Whoopi Goldberg dreadlocks? Dreadlocks? No, ma'am. His hair was, matted, tangled, oily, dirty. Really? Had the hair been cut? Yeah, messy. No, not cut. That I saw. Receding hairline. Hair fell over his face some. His ears showed through. Hair on the head was thick and black. Bobby. So he was on his side or laying how? Tiny ears? No, ma'am. We turned him over. The ear I saw was smallish. For as big as he was, the ears were, pausing, like any. Not pointed like Spock or anything like that. Laughter. I thought his ears were smallish to me. The ears were small, yes, shaped like mine. Bobby. You're kidding me, Paul. You turned the body over? Paul. Yes, ma'am, we did. Had to get the air out. He was rolled over a couple of times. I was afraid the air would be traced back to me at some point in the res. I didn't know. I wasn't thinking logically. At the time we were so pumped and all, you see? Oh, good, Paul. You pulled the arrow out. So then what? His face was down at that point? Crumpled, kind of, on his right side. We were just harebrained kids, and you think you know everything when you're 18, invincible and full of that macho shit. I never saw a man die before. I thought about the Northern Cheyenne tradition, that we shouldn't look at the figure of the big man, but too late. Interrupting. What do you mean too late? At seeing him so kind of human-looking, yet his features were distorted somewhat, like, you mean exaggerated? That's it. The brute was big. I mean shockingly big. Everything was exaggerated. So you downed him with one arrow? Yes, ma'am. Do you know about archery? No, nothing. A back shot? Yes. At what distance? I don't remember exactly. Maybe 15, 20 yards through the willows. Maybe more. Not bad considering I was taking a beat up the ass of a bear. Laughter. One arrow? Yes, ma'am. For a kid, you're some shot, I take it. A shot I regret. I guess I grew up that day, all right. Paul, tell me something. You got really close to this character. What about the smell we hear so much about? Did you notice anything like that? No, ma'am. No smell except sweaty. Look, Livy, there was no smell that reeked. No. In lifting up the creature's arms, though, there is the same underarm stink all men have who don't wash or use deodorant. See? Now see what I'm saying? That part may have been a bit stronger than you're used to, though. You see? Really? That was all? Yes, ma'am. I also read Roger Patterson's quote that Patty stank. But now look, Patterson never defined it. Look, this guy, well, his armpit stunk, yes, but there was no reeking odor, no green mushroom cloud that filled the air, nothing that permeated the air like a skunk or spray. You have to be up and over this individual to smell its armpits, you know? You see what I'm saying now? Bobby. Okay, yes. But now hold on, Paul. So what do we make of the reports we have in the data that describe a reeking foul smell permeating the region a Sasquatch is in? I don't know. I just don't know. There's no accounting for some things. I think they make that shit up. Excuse the language, ma'am. Look, we're going over his body. He was just like mine, but way bigger, more muscular, and of course hairier than most men. The hair may be some evolved thing to help preserve life. I don't know, but there was no place on him that would account for a nasty emission of defensive odor. No. No gases that shot out of his ass, and... You checked out his... Paul. No, I didn't separate his buttocks and look. No, maybe we should have. Bobby. I didn't catch any odor either, but with all these other reports I thought maybe I missed something, so I'm grateful for your recollections here. Did his armpit smell like... What did his armpit smell like? I know that sounds gross, but... Paul. B.O., plain rancid B.O., but it didn't permeate and fill the air or anything like that a few feet away. I don't remember that we smelled him, but some bears smell awful, like gross. Now, I actually had to lift his arm to get a whiff. I wasn't looking for stink glands, if that is what you mean. If men think they can track these beings by scent in the air, I might argue that point, but dogs? Yes, I don't know, ma'am, where this idea of foul emission of stink comes from, unless imagined or it's attributable to other creatures in the woods. You know, we have stinking civet cats up here in the Rockies. Wolverines, skunks, and all manner of weasel family types. Smell worse than the Sasquatch did, and, laughter, I played football with guys who were worse smelling. Bobby, I get it. Let's move on. Okay, so you removed the arrow. What did you see next? Describe the hairy parts of his body. Paul, the hair from his head was long and tangled down his back, with the hair that grew on his backside. Like he was all matted and caked in blood from him being turned over. It was long off the back of his shoulders, but became short, very short, over his buttocks. The bottom of the butt wasn't so hairy. There was no hair in his chest, but short black hair that came down over the front of his shoulders and sort of spilled over his upper arm, looking like a wild man look about him. There was less hair on the upper arms than the lower arms. Bobby, did the hair grow evenly over his body? Paul, oh hell no. Some was long, some was short. Some places no hair at all. His hair didn't grow evenly. If it did, that wouldn't be natural, would it? He had more hair on his back than anywhere else, long down his sides. Bobby, I wouldn't think so. Did you see his hands? Would you describe them? Paul, his hands were exactly like mine, only bigger, and the palms were either calloused or fatty-like, and under each finger it was like thicker skin on the undersides of the fingers. I distinctly remember the extraordinary length of the fingers. They were thick and quite lengthy. The skin was not a stark white and not dark brown, but light, not black-skinned, and he had calluses, thick calluses on his palms. His hands were very large. I was impressed at how wide his hands were, like again, a full hand wider than mine. This guy was, pausing to drink his cola, massive, huge. Coughing, his chest, butt, and shoulders, ma'am. Powerful shoulders and upper torso. I can't think of, another word than powerful. I can see why people are stunned or scared seeing these guys standing upright. Let me tell you, the sight was impressive. Bobby, you're impressed by the size. I can tell, laughing. Were his hands hairy? Paul, heavy laughter. Are you asking if his palms were hairy? Bobby, what? No, be serious, Paul. I'm not talking about hairy palms. More laughter. No, ma'am, not hairy like a dog, but there was a tuft of hair on all fingers, just before the knuckles. Topside, hair on tops of his hands, hairy knuckles. Like no hair on the palms of his hands. No hair on top of his hands? Really? I get the feeling they were all haired differently. Paul, forward of the knuckles there's a thick tuft, little bit of hair, then bare. And onto the fingernails, which were not white, more yellowish ivory. But then, both hands were very bloody. My recollection there may be off some. He grabbed his neck and upper chest. His feet were kicking at the ground. His right arm grabbed, like at his mouth, like he was choking on blood. Where is he bleeding from? And his nose, mouth, upper right neck area where the arrow stuck through and came out. He kept kicking and grabbing at his neck. Blood gushed out of his mouth in spurts. Yeah, probably with each heartbeat. Hard to watch, I'd imagine. Very. But we didn't know what else to do. Bobby, what did you do? Do you remember what he did next? What did you do? Do you remember what you did next? After the shot, we crept up quietly and watched him flail around there for only a moment. Then for me, I realized this wasn't no black bear and I didn't know what I had done. A god-awful sight I remember now. Were you afraid of him at that point? No, not afraid, but shaken up. I seen he was mortally wounded. His kicking slowed way down, but the grabbing at his neck and coughing, choking, and spitting blood kept up for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. It wasn't long, but in a kid's world it seemed like forever. Was he making any noise? Oh, hell yes. He was mostly choking. Drowning, I guess. I seen deer drown like that one lung shot before. I saw an elk with an arrow in the neck dancing around trying to shake it loose. He bled through the nose and mouth just like this one was doing. You almost have to take another shot then, but I knew somehow instinctively maybe the Bigfoot was done for. His big arm sort of fell limp by his side then. The bright red bubbles stopped coming out of his mouth and his chest stopped heaving. No more convulsing. The look of terror on his face relaxed and no longer afraid. I was plenty shaken up, though, and got down on one knee beside the thing and I told him I was sorry. I was barely 18. I thought I knew everything, Bobby, where was your cousin at that point? Paul, he was standing down by his feet, crying, freaked. Nothing was said. I knew I'd killed something sacred to the Wind People. An awful moment. Then finally a gust of air shot out of his mouth, and this bright red stuff flew up in his face and into his hair, and his twisted body relaxed. We were transfixed, I guess shocked, as the creature lay there dead. I stared. He had nothing within him. There was just him and us, and now, quiet-like, not moving. There was no sound, no birds, no crickets, just wind in the willows, carrying his spirit to rest. Where was this again? Western Wyoming. Dead air on the phone. Dynamite elk country. I have a friend up there in elk country who claimed a Bigfoot sighting 10 years ago. Bobby, what year was that? Probably the 1980s. Okay, so back to the male issue. Come on, genitalia. Yes, ma'am, he was male. His unit was unusually thick and quite long, flaccid, hanging right down about 7, maybe 8 inches in that condition. He was not circumcised, of course. He had one big testicle and the other one was evidently twisted back under the other. I didn't see that. A lot of hair, you know. I don't recall. Then he started dribbling urine, and he died and continued leaking fluid out until we buggered out of there. Paul, you touched him? Yes, ma'am, I did. Curiosity, you know. We were just kids after all. It was a stupid curiosity thing, ma'am. I had to be sure he was a man. I never saw a dead man before. This was no creature. This is no animal, ma'am. It was a man. Man-like. Like me, but some different. The hair will throw you. I didn't expect this. I didn't think this was a man when I pulled back to set my bow. No, ma'am, I didn't. He had to have been down on his knees, bending over, ass towards me. The black hair threw me. No, I don't know now. From that distance, he was a bear grazing. The shot was taken through willows and heavy brush, you see? All I could think was, take the shot. Take the upping shot. Sorry for the language, ma'am. And I wouldn't take that shot today. Back then, I was very young and excited. Highly charged kid. Bending over like he was. He looked just like a grazing bear with his back to us. Ass in towards me, head down. Bobby. Sounds like what Clayton Mack said during a grizzly hunt he was on with a client from Montana. Did you ever read Grizzlies and White Guys? He also described sneaking up on a bear, what he thought was a bear, until it stood up and faced him. Paul. No, I don't think I know that story. Where was this? Bella Coola, BC. Okay. Well, anyway, he was alive when you touched him. No, he was dead then. The genitalia, was it black-skinned? No, he could pass for a Northern Cheyenne man like me. Thick black pubes around there and very large, but he was altogether a big man. His size was overall something to be believed. I'm guessing 8 or 9 feet tall. Did you ever see him standing upright? No. Even when you walked up on him, he was already down on all fours? Yes, that's right. I never saw him upright. But what about when you walked up on him? You said he was moving? Yes, ma'am. You mean after I took the shot? Well, yes, he was alive and was groaning. Deep noises. He was gurgling, struggling to breathe. He was dying, ma'am. You know how that is? We were supposed to see him instead of what I thought. He wasn't the bear. I thought a shot, or a bear. The shot was supposed to be... Imagine how shocked we was at seeing. Just effing shocked. Pausing. You know, my knees buckled seeing him on the ground like that. I felt sick to my stomach. We had a situation. That's when I dropped down on one knee beside him and shaking all over. Shock, I guess. Plain, unadulterated shock and disbelief. I got hot water rushing in my mouth like I needed to hurl. Damn. I haven't thought this deeply about it in years. Bobby, I understand it was a tough situation. Do you want to take a break? No, ma'am, it was tough, yes. Well, hell, it's an awful thing to see. So Blood came out of his nose and mouth each time he tried to get air. He struggled, choked. You know, his body lurched forward like when you puke. That kind of lurching, and he kicked. I think the arrow caught a lung. The blood turned bright red bubbles. And when he got air, the bubbles blew out of his nose. Won't do anything to help him. He convulsed once or twice if I remember. No air was getting into that point. I can't. Then it was over. His chest stopped heaving. He stopped kicking. That was it. And so I got down on one knee and I said I was sorry. Where did the arrow enter? Left back, under the ribs, entering upwards and came out right base of the neck. Strange angle, but he was bent over. Looked like a grazing bear, I swear. I thought I was shooting a bear up its ass. And then, yes, I know, did you ever determine why he was bent over? No, but he may have been aware we were there and maybe he was trying to hide from us, you know. I don't know another reason. What was your cousin doing? He was jumping around yelling, "This isn't a bear! Shit, this isn't a bear!" Laced with other profanities like that. I don't remember his exact words. We were both upset. Alarmed and in shock. He showed it physically. You know, he was younger than me, maybe not quite 15 or so. Did we talk about the creature's height? Don't know. I never did see him full up, only bent over, but he was plenty big laying there on the ground like that, maybe 8 or 9 feet tall, 450, 500 plus pounds maybe. We didn't measure. No time to really know for sure, no time, and nothing to measure with. I never thought of anything like measuring. The hair was black all over. Yes, ma'am, it was. What did you think he was doing there? I don't know. We didn't think about that. But hiding from us, like maybe hunched down hiding. What happened next? What did you do? We didn't know what to do. Shock makes you think crazy, twisted things. I wasn't rational at all, sad to say. It's like exaggerated in slow-mo. I never thought I would see one of these things. Big figure, Bigfoot, you know. You hear about them. Hunters talk about them. But I mostly engaged talk about little people, not this. But of course I knew them from my grandmother. And, you know, I haven't known anyone of my own people who killed one of them. Not my generation anyway. Lots have seen them. And, well, we have this saying among my people, the Northern Cheyenne and those who raised me on the reservation, that this is not a good omen. To see one is thought to be bad enough. To kill one is, well, it's like the worst omen, the very worst. What kind of omen, Paul? Our tradition is that you see one as bad luck. To kill, well, the portent is a short life, a very short life. Do you believe that? Yes. I appreciate you telling me about this. One last question, I'll let you go. Did you see his feet? Yes, ma'am, of course. He wasn't wearing polished, floor-shame, wingtop, shoe size 30. Uproarious laughter. I'm kidding. Funny man. You should have been a comedian, Paul. I think you were just waiting for me to ask that question, weren't you? Paul. I know. Yeah, I was. And you bit. Bobby. I sure did. What can you add to what we already know from the tracks? What color was the skin on his feet? Paul. Well, the feet were lengthy. I don't know how long they were. Well, were not entirely flat, but quite thick. The skin was not black like chimpanzee skin. It was the same color as my feet. His color, where we could see it, it was like mine, Indian skin, tan complexion color. He could pass for a Cheyenne man, no problem. Thick? As in stupid? Bobby. No, laughing. That's funny. Like a calloused padded what? Or thick regular skin what? Paul. Yes, the bottoms felt like real thick canvas, thickly padded, hard to the touch. His heels had a lot of cracks in the bottom, like dried out feet would get. His legs were heavy, with hair, long, thick, curly-like hair over top of his foot. You touched his foot? You're really curious. Yes, I did. Hell, I didn't know why I'd touch him in the first place. You do weird shit when you're in shock and a stupid kid. I was just a frightened kid then, you know? His feet, well, they felt like thick canvas. Very thick canvas. Rough hide with scars. I have a better word to help you visualize. His feet felt like dried out deer hide, ma'am. You know what that feels like, don't you? The tops of his feet were hairy over the ankles. Thick hair there. Did this one have enough hair to stay warm in the winter, Paul? Oh, hell no. Did the one you saw? Bobby. No, not even. And I'm really curious about winter survival and all. Bobby. Oh, I almost forgot. What about the eye teeth? Cuspids. Did he have fangs? You know? Paul, like elongated eye teeth? Did you canine-like fangs? Paul. No, nothing like fangs, but his teeth were crooked, if that helps. What I could see was twisted uppers, front, and I think, yes, lowers, but we didn't check out the back teeth. His mouth was all bloody, actually gushing until he breathed his last breath, and then it just dribbled onto the dirt. I don't remember any fangs. Fangs? Are you kidding me? Bobby. No, I'm not. I have reports of pointed eye teeth, mostly from people who think they're apes, and a few dogman reports. But can you talk about the skull shape again? Fangs? Here writes fangs. Seriously? Yes, ma'am. It was a receding hairline, but the head shape was like any other big man. It was larger, larger than mine. Bobby. Pointed? Cone-shaped? Paul. No. No, not a pointed head. I told you no. And no hair on the forehead, but thick, bushy eyebrows. Head-like, shaped like mine, but it was not a gorilla-shaped head if that's what you're going for. Is that what you're after? No, Bobby. No, I heard it said... no. I heard said some have pointed heads. Others say slope forehead like the mountain gorilla. Sometimes I think that gets confused with one imagines a sagittal crest looks like. So I asked, and you know, Paul, I didn't see a pointed head either. But you know, people say conical head. And I think that those people have preconditioned mindsets by something they've seen previously. You know, I think these witnesses in the shock are often influenced by photograph they've seen before their actual visual. They may be influenced deliberately or unintentionally, I don't know. But for a while, the conical head was reported at the same time, reported by people who likened their visual to the creature in the film attributed to Roger Patterson. Funny, but after M.K. Davis provided film assurances that the conical head swayed with every step the creature took, there were no more reports of conical heads. Is that wild or what? Witnesses seemed reluctant to say conical after they realized the pointedness was hair moving. Anyway, trends like that come and go over the years in research. They say they have no neck. What did you see? Paul. Yes, a neck, short, covered with his hair and beard. He was heavily bearded, and under the chin, down his neck and onto his chest, like that. The beard was long, unshaven. His hair around his Adam's apple was very long and thick. Sagittal crest? My dear, any crest, if he had one, wouldn't show through all that hair on his head. So I don't know, probably not, but I don't know. Bobby. Okay, thanks. Then what did you guys do? Paul. We were looking him over some, couldn't believe our eyes. I remember in flash thoughts, some more vivid than others. We must have spent several minutes looking him over. As much as 20-30 minutes may have gone by. He was just unbelievable. Then, that was when we heard a distant scream, like a big puma, and it was answered by another much louder scream within yards of us, or it seemed like. It rattled us back to a healthy state of reality. The hair on my arm stood straight up. The situation we were in, it brought me out of the dazed moment I was in. You see, this is now like flash thoughts, happened fast. But now it wasn't probably that fast. I don't know anymore. But damn it, scared me. The scream, you know. I feared the worst, like there was another Bigfoot of this guy's size still out there looking for this dead guy. We didn't know what. I grabbed my cousin's shoulder real hard. He was younger than me, really shook up. I pointed the way out of there. No words were exchanged. We both knew. We both knew we had to get the hell out of there and back to the truck. Boy, did we run. We reached the truck out of wind, dry mouth-like, running mostly, if you can imagine, nearly 2 miles back. Threw in the gear and put rubber to the road. Bobby. Have you ever been back there, Paul? Did you ever wonder? Paul. No, ma'am, never did. We hunted there after that, but never in the same region again. Bobby. You think there are others there? Paul. Yes, damn straight. I think there's a tribe of them in those mountains. The hunting is always good there. There's plenty of water, wildlife, wild vegetation. They could range high and low in the valleys where we were that day and hardly ever be seen. The bush is thick. Never burned that I know about. No fires in there. Plenty of caves in the high country. Granite ledges there above the timberline. But you didn't see the others? No, we only heard their screams, which is when we bailed. Were you ever in those caves? Did you? Paul. Oh, sure, lots of times as a kid. Some of those tunnels snake around those mountains for miles, some very deep. We played in caves in the res, you know, but we never went in them deep. They were dangerous drop-offs in areas where the tubes got very small or were blocked from us getting around. Those caves got very cold and some. The wind whistled through and sounded really eerie like soft whispering or someone whispering. Spooky. I remember one time the winds really howled through those tubes. My older cousin thought it was a warning of some kind. Bobby. Did you ever smell anything unusual in the Wind Bobby? Did you ever smell anything unusual in the Wind River caves? Paul. Not that I remember. But then once in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains of southern Colorado in a place called Devil's Tube, there was the unmistakable smell of bacon cooking. It was always there. The place had no whistling wind. We heard it said those lava tubes eventually exited to the south somewhere in the lava fields, north of the Great Taos Plain. But we... Then blank. And then it says the interview audio tape ends. And then Bobby goes back into writing more, and she says, I dropped the ball by not asking Wilson what year all this took place, but my own calculations, I think it had to be around 1968 or 1970. He said he never spoke about it, and there's no particular reason for keeping that to himself other than he was ashamed of it. Paul was not overtly demonstrative. He didn't know it when he allowed this interview, but he would only live a little while longer. He died in his sleep October 5th, 2009. He was only 57. Just as he said, the omen of the Northern Cheyenne, which he said he believed in, foretold of a very short life for those who shoot a Sasquatch. As for Paul's cousin, he died when he was quite young while hunting bighorn sheep in the Wind River Range of Wyoming. Paul died in Aurora, Colorado. The bad omen of the Northern Cheyenne took Paul away too soon. I don't know what I think about the portent of good or bad signs of prophetic significance, but apparently this particular prophecy came true. I'm grateful for his Sasquatch description and a memory of a fine man whose path crossed mine. I hope readers benefit from his description. Wow. And there you go. There is the first time I've read one of the numerous killing reports and interviews that Bobby Short wrote about and kept records of, and I have them in my hands. The next one's titled The Manitoba Shooting, the Canadian Moose Hunter Shooting. That sounds familiar. I think I've read about that one. And Bobby goes on to read about this in great detail. But anyway, let's try this one for the first time, you guys. And we'll do this again. And I will get through all these in honor of the late and great Bobby Short. And I hope she rests in peace, and I hope that this puts somewhat of a smile on her face that I'm sharing all of these. I'm going to share all of this with all of you. And we can all thank the kind, sweet woman who mailed all this information to me. So there you go. Hope this wasn't too annoying with the crackling fire in the background and the echo of being inside, but I guess it's a little better than having the sun glaze off of these pages, or the snow hit it, or the sleet or the rain hit it, or the wind. So I guess I'm gonna have to I'll have to do these series of reads from indoors. Well, there you go. Be safe out there, you guys.